Hello everyone, welcome. So this is your instructor Jimmy for Exploring Digital Photography Online. Right now what I'm about to walk you guys through is how I would do a bit of editing for some sneak peeks that I picked out for a client. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through this as I go and edit it to kind of give you an idea. Once again, what we went over yesterday for editing and then how I go through my guidelines of editing to help me get these photos complete, okay? So first off, I'm editing in Adobe Bridge. It is an Adobe program. It is included with the subscription. You know, even though it's a different program, all of the editing sliders are going to look very similar, right? From what we went over yesterday, you're going to see the same tabs, light, color, effects, all that. So you're already kind of familiar with how these things work. So now I'm going to show you how I typically put these all into play and you know, into action. I mean, honestly, these are like a list of my presets that I use for different things. So typically it would be as fast as adding a preset, bumping up exposure. I'm not even looking at the image, I just know from the top of my head that how this works. We're gonna rotate it, oops, not rotate it, crop it a little bit, move it, that. We're gonna get something pretty close, right? And that was, what, less than a minute, less than 30 seconds because of like my preset and my ability to edit and knowing what I'm looking for, right? So we're gonna teach you how to go from something like this to something like this, right? And that's all, it's all very simple, it's all very fast, right? So, let's start with the raw image. First things first, for this one, you know, what I always say is we're gonna go ahead and raise the exposure first. We're gonna bump that up so I can see what I'm working with, right? Okay, we got some nice detail in there. I'm gonna also crop and kind of fix that horizon line. The straight horizon line really does a lot for me in my images. Okay, I like what we've got here. They seem a little dark though, so let's raise some of the shadow a bit to reveal some of that information. The highlights seem very bright. So now we're going to take some of that down. Remember when I talked about clipping yesterday with the blacks? So see this white, this what's in red? This is, oh, let's move here. Okay, so now that this is moved out of the way, see everything that's highlighted here in red? That is what's called your highlight clippings, meaning that everything here, there's no detail, it's just going to be the color white, right? If you look over here on these top corners, these are basically my little clipping warnings that are going to help me turn these on and off. It helps me to know because that just kind of means it's too bright. So I'll just take some of the exposure or the highlights down, and as you see as it goes down, that just red goes away. And if you look at the histogram, because right now I'm just pointing on the highlights, you're seeing it slowly shift over and putting more information into my image. Now, I can actually drop the exposure down, right? So if you look under here, where I'm highlighted, you're going to see what it is that I'm changing. This is why I really like editing on my computer because it's so much faster for me in this sense, right? Okay, so if you look over here in the blacks are peaking really hard, meaning they're very dark and saturated. So maybe we can bring up the shadows a bit, you know, zoom in, see it's before, after, before, after. Okay, cool. Now if we look at this image just kind of for what it is, last things that I want to change, I think I'm going to take some of the whites down because you see the whites are really peaking, they're really sharp, really contrasty. So let's take some of those whites down. You're gonna see it slowly, you see how it's just shifting over, and now it's bringing a lot more balance into my image. And I think right about there is like a decent spot. So now, you know, like there's a lot of, it's evened out where all my detail is within the image, right? We have some detail in the shadows, the midtones, and then the highlights are, you know, they're peaking pretty hard. We got a really strong sun right there, so of course that's gonna be like that, you know. The blacks are already peaking here, so I'm not going to touch them here just yet, unless I have to go back there. So I just did my global edits, right? Push and pull. I'm going to go into curve now, right? And I'm going to do some slight adjustments in here. This is the way I like to edit, so I'm just showing my editing style, right? I'm going to pull the midtones down a little bit, just make that a little bit less bright. Maybe just make the blacks a little black, like darker in there, yep. Okay, you see the contrast really coming out, but now the blacks are really sharp. Let's take the blacks up, right? See how that goes, about like 50. Cool, yeah, we're starting to get some nice pop to this image without it being like over the top. So you see how now these aren't touching the top of the graph up here? Not necessarily like the worst thing, but for me, it looks like I have to bring back some of my highlights and my whites, so we're gonna actually add in some of those highlights back, and you see this slides to go up, right? I'm gonna leave the whites down. I think just adding in the highlights is pretty good, but you see I brought back some of that natural brightness to my image, right? And then this looks pretty good for what it is so far, okay, right? The color, I mean, my auto white balance was pretty good on this to begin with. It's relatively close. I wouldn't change it too much. Like, as is, honestly. But because I like to really be on top of my color, I don't like to have any sort of color cast. So what I do is I'll take off the tint, right? And you can see it's warm, it's yellow, but it's also got a hint of green. So I'm gonna bring this down, the temperature down to kind of balance out that white balance a little bit. You see it's a little bit more of like a truer white, but we still kind of have like that noticeable, like kind of, well, for me in my screen, green cast in there. So now this is where, I'm gonna go into color grading, right? So for me, first things first, a little bit of shadows, just to kind of add some color, just get that wheel, and we're gonna spin it around until I see something that I like, right? So for me, I'm liking it right around here for the shadows. It really kind of evened out their skin tone for me. So let's reset that. So that's before, after, before, and after. And guys, it's really subtle. If you're having a hard time seeing it, don't feel bad. It's like, it takes a while to look at color and kind of get used to being able to pick it out. Okay, so now we see you got a little bit more clip in there. Let's just kind of take that down. Cool. Now we're going to spin the wheel until I find what I like. Okay, looks like maybe the... Okay, yeah, looks like we're pumping some green into the highlights. Let's see what that looks like before, after, before, after. All right, and yeah, let's kind of adjust that. Yeah, no, I'm making more yellow and orange. That way it just feels warmer. Cool. So this is before color grading, after, before, after. All right, let me zoom in. Before, after. Super subtle. But for me, this is how I really make that little fine-tuned touch on my images so that they really become my own. Yeah. Okay. So that's this image. I feel like this image is pretty complete. I like the way it looks for the most part. We'll add some little extra things on top of it to make it a little bit more complete. Remember, clarity is going to add a little bit of contrast to the lines. I like that, but we're working with people, so I take the texture down. I don't really want to, have too much of a sharp texture on my people. And then I'm just going to do a negative vignette. We'll do -5, right? So remember that vignette casts like a faded dark circle around your image. I think a little bit of vignette's nice, darker vignette, because it just makes it look a little bit more like cinematic, for lack of a better word. Okay. Actually, I think this might be a little warm, so even with my color temperature or my color grading added, I'm not going to change the color grading. I'm going to mess with the color temperature and see how that looks. Okay, cool. So it looks a little bit more natural of a truer white to me. Okay. Yeah, you see those minor adjustments? I'm not going through and making big adjustments to what I did before, Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, guys, this is what's gonna make everything really nice and easy from here. I'm just gonna copy and paste from one to the other, right? So let's remember that those 3 dots in the top right corner, you're able to copy your settings. So we'll go here, I'm gonna Control C for computer, just copy, paste, right? And then I'm gonna just show you how I would normally do this once I have it all set up, right? So, flying through. Right now, guys, because of the settings that I like on the other one, I'm only changing the exposure. I'm dropping the shadows down a little bit, and now I'm gonna make it a little bit cooler so that it's not, Alrighty then. Okay, and then done. Next image, copy, paste. Okay, you see it's a little bit blue, kind of in like their skin tone, so that means, we're gonna bring that up, let's make it warmer. Alright, now we're about somewhere right there. Okay, look at that. Okay, so I'm gonna bring the shadows down. It's gonna deepen the blacks around them because we don't really need the shadows high in an image like this. So now I'm actually doing negative. So you see how more saturated the blacks are. Let's go back before that. So before, after, Make that a little bit brighter. Our blacks are, those are pretty desaturated. This feels pretty good. The green is standing out to me, the green and the yellow. So then we go to the color mixer. Let's drop this in the saturation. 2. Take those both down. You see how much more softer that image became without it? So with those colors, without, and they really kind of blend in together. Now it feels so much more balanced to me. I like where we're going with this now. So I think the skin tones are a little flat to me. So now I'm gonna go back to my color grading, right? And I'm thinking about midtones. Those are like the middle images. Think about like your skin. So now let's see if I pump in a little bit of color into the midtones, right? And just for going to that one, so this is before, after, right? Look how much more like rosy and red her skin tone is, right? Before, after. I like that a lot. So let's kind of move that around, see how it looks. Not too much, and subtleties. Good. So all right, we're right here. So backwards. Yeah. So we are right here. Go back to that. Right there. So this is what we started with. this is where we are, right? And what am I gonna do next? The best part, copy and paste, right? Because this is how you're gonna be able to go through editing and make it fast, right? So I just copy and paste. This is very white, there's not really much color. I wouldn't change anything else, I'm just gonna make it warmer. Now watch as I make it warmer, look how much more of her skin tone comes back, look how much more of that color. Because once your white balance is kind of set, typically, or like what you want to work off of, like that's when you can just really just raise your color temperature up and down, and then and just kind of fix that, right? You see this little bit of hair right here, to me that's a distraction. So I'm gonna go into my remove tool. I'm lazy and I have my computer, so this is the beautiful thing about having a computer connected to the internet, so that generative AI can work as best as possible, right? Because remember, with remove, you just highlight it, wait, and then it's gonna do its thing. That's not exactly what I want, but it has variations, right? So we can kind of go through all this, and we can pick one that makes sense. That's good. That one. Okay. All right, and we zoom out, and it's hard to tell. The main thing is that it's hard to tell. All right, I'm gonna lift the shadows a little bit on this one, so it's not as dark, so you can see a little bit more of her, without the background kind of taken away. We take those highlights down a bit more, and just like, you know, original image, after. Original image, after. You see how like this is going through really quickly for me, right? So I'm just gonna like zoom through the rest, and then you're gonna see exactly how quick you can get when you are honestly just copying and pasting your settings and having a base style to go off of, right? So once again, just dropping color temperature, that felt too warm on your skin tone. I'm gonna brighten that up. Looks like, so it's, you know, we lose a lot of highlights in here. Let's bring some of those whites back. Look how that really stretches it back over, look at that. All right, so before, after. And all I'm doing, copy, pasting, and flying through. All right, guys, and welcome to your first editing tutorial, right? So, are you gonna get like this after this class? I mean, that would be nice. You know, it's gonna take time. It's gonna take time. So this stuff, you know, don't expect to be able to move this fast or fluidly right off the bat, you know? I'm working on my computer, so of course, like, I'm gonna be able to edit really quickly with what I have, and I can do it very subconsciously just because I do it a lot, you know? But you can see the power and the speed of which that I'm going through this. And then doing it on your phone, it's gonna be, you know, not nearly as fast, obviously, but, you know, the main thing that I really want you to pay attention to is the guidelines, is the order of edits and how I go through it, so that it's gonna help give you a base. Right? And then you see how I'm going through this and making adjustments. And if you're having a hard time paying attention, guys, pause it. Pause it and slowly go through what it is that I'm doing instead of just sitting here listening to me talk. Because the motions, I think, are going to really help you. So when I'm up here in the histogram, just grabbing and pulling, you will see underneath it what is being highlighted as I shift it, right? So it's everything just under here, guys. You should be able to see that. But, you know, we're just flying through, right? This was a really cute family. They're previous clients of mine. They were on island because their daughter is here for a basketball tournament. We met, you know, and like this is something like a sneak peek too, you know, this is just super quick. I'm flying through. I'm not really trying to go nitpicky with the edits, but, you know, and this is how fast and how quick it can go through, you know? Once you have your base of editing that you can apply and really just kind of go and just change from photo to photo, you know? So this will be like making your own preset, like, and just using it as best as you can from photo to photo. Don't expect it to be exact for every photo, but instead of changing the whole thing, you know, you're changing just incremental things to it of what you've already done. Like I see, I'm not changing like much else. I'm just changing the color temperature, and I'm just rotating the crop and trying to get her centered, you know, and I'm leaving it much at that, right? Because I know deep down, like, you know, that my colors are all good, right? And for her, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on these anyway because they're sneak peeks, right? But you can see with just like from the speed and the fluidity of how quickly this is all kind of going here, yeah. I love these shots. I love that. This is something called focus contrast, guys. It's one of my favorite types of shots that I do. Right, so essentially it's the contrast of what's in focus versus what's not in focus. It's typically, more often than not, the couple's in focus. And, you know, it's kind of standard, nothing wrong with that. So this is kind of just flipping that script, right? Super cute. Let's make it more. And let's get rid of these people. This is why, like, you know, you can't expect your phone to edit this fast. You really can't, you know? Okay. All right, guys. I think that's a good spot to stop here for this portion, but this is how I go through editing. I hope this helps. If you guys have any questions about this, please let me know. Okay? We'll talk soon. Take care, guys.